Hello everyone, my name is Snipeyland. So I don't really do normal do build videos. I'm kind of doing it because I play a lot of Caliban, and I play him in kind of a bit of a weird way, and I actually have a friend who's kind of pressuring me to kind of make a video on it, because no one else really, I've never really seen much talk about building Caliban in the way that I do. So yeah, I'm gonna go over it. The way that I build him is kind of weird. I build him for a lot of duration. And I will say this build is high investment, and you don't need a helmet ability. My helmet ability is just kind of that. Shards. I have an energy max. One duration shard, and then two, strength shards, and then one casting speed. These shards are nice. They're not essential. It's more that this build is high investment, although it's really weird. Alright, so I will kind of go over some of the helmet options up here, and like the way that I do it. So with this build has a lot of duration, like seriously a lot, and the reason why is to try to have my sentience to have the longest lifespan possible with Razor Mortar. Right, and so that's why I'm running Narrow-Minded and Arcane Concentration, which does have a unique interaction with Razor Mortar, which I'll go over briefly in a second. And, right, the different, like, this is kind of the standard Caliban. Oh, my polarity, or aura slots missing. This is kind of the more standard Caliban build, right? Ridiculously high strength, kind of minimal duration, really, and going full in on strength setup. And this build is, like, traditionally very popular, and kind of the main way you see Caliban, and kind of why I kind of want to make this video, because I feel like a lot of the builds kind of orient around this skeleton. So the thing with this build is with the high duration, it kind of lets you play as a more weapons platform gun hybrid, which normal Razor Mortar builds kind of lean more towards a caster build. And for me, like, Caliban's huge strength is the fact that he's kind of a really powerful hybrid, like, jack of all trades that can kind of do whatever you want him to do. So that's kind of the main thing. The main thing I will bring up is concentration real quick. So, concentration's weird interaction is, despite the fact that it's meant to, like, give you higher duration by spamming abilities, right? I'm out of energy, but you see, like, the 6% extra duration. There's a couple abilities in the game that actually benefit from their own cast. Razor Mortar is one of them. A few of the other ones is, like, Jade's one, Corvex is one, and I'm sure there's a couple more. I think seemingly it is that basically the fundamental theme is that the ability checks their stats at the end of the cast, not the start of the cast. For example, Razor Mortar would check the stats at the end of the spinning in that setup, so the duration would get added. So, for reference to, just for clarity of what I'm running here, I'm running a Deadhead Gas Lex, which I'm not going to use, and a Dual Viskies. I'm not. The main thing I'm going to be using is a Jupiter, which, yes, does have a Riven. The Jupiter is a gun. Like, I just like it. And I kind of want to run it as the sake of it is a generically okay gun, right? It has some funny interactions with Debilitate with the Altfire, which makes it like a kind of a fun status hose. But realistically, if you use any good gun, like, you're gonna go just as well. The Riven just kind of makes it decent. Like an AX-52 or even a Soma Incarnon is gonna be like on par with this without a Riven. I'm just running this because it's the gun I like, really. The main point is to show kind of an average weapon and the, like, potential this build has. I am also running a MOA with a corrosive cold Tazakor. There is a Riven as well in this, but this is just status duration and punch through. This just makes it a little better for priming. At the end of the day, this is very much like nothing major. The MOA build, I know MOAs aren't really that popular, so I'll go over. I'm using Stasis Field for kind of some extra DR, and to kind of do the whole projectile slow thing. More of that's kind of for fun. Big thing is, MOAs kind of are able to infinitely loop a 3000 overshield, so they're able to constantly have Reinforced Bond up in a way that no other, like, other Sentinels can't have, which is kind of nice for a companion weapon. to start with the build, I'm actually going to kind of do something that's a little different, where I'm going to be using this more traditional Caliban build. And I'm going to compare it with what the build is, because I kind of want to show how the average Caliban build works. I'm going to use this as a testing grounds. The enemies are on pause because I kind of want to actually have a realistic point. Right, these are just heavy gunner Eximus with Overguard, 12 Exo Goose Drags, and 2 Butchers just for ramp up and a Bailiff. I'm using this Simulacrum testing room for a very specific reason. It kind of goes against Razor Mortar. This is a very wide open tile, and like, there's very few tiles this wide open, but there's still plenty of rooms, especially in more modern tile sets, like since, I want to say the Deadlock Protocol with the Corpus rework, most of them have been pretty wide open, so you're not going to be able to suck every enemy up and kind of have them all clumped up. Especially since I want to show this build kind of doing the whole hybrid thing. So the only thing I'm going to be doing is Ortholis and Razor Mortar too. So as you can see, right, I'm going to have them grouped up. Have that. I will be recasting Razor Mortar to reset my shield gate. And, right, like, I mean, this is clearing through them pretty well. Right, I mean, at the end of the day, it's Razor Mortar. It's a very powerful build. Sentience, like, quadruple dip on strength. It's kind of, like, a huge strength of it. Now, I'm going to show a build, like, helmet ability and no augment build beyond this. Constitution, by the way, is the flex spot if you kind of want to mess with anything. I'm just not going to use Bright Bonnet. Bright Bonnet's kind of just nice for the energy and extra power strength, although it's by far not really needed. Okay, sorry, I had to do a cut. I unfortunately had something come up that kind of had to make me quickly stop on this, but again, I'm going to kind of show this build. Again, this is with the higher duration setup. All I'm going to be doing is casting my Ortholis and my Razor Mortar to refresh whenever my shield gate falls. Right, all I'm doing is bot walking, using my gun. I'm not really intending to do anything crazy. But like, as you can kind of see, I don't know what Xmas there is, but there's something shredding my shields. This actually, like, lets me kind of use my guns or do whatever while my Ortholists chew through. How I can let the Ortholists finish the remaining adds while I have 8 seconds and chill. And, like, yeah, as you can see, they're kind of going into that. Yeah, basically, they almost completely, I AFK'd for, like, 8 seconds, and they nearly killed off, like, Exo Goose Drag officers, which, if you don't know, are, like, some of the more tankier enemies you can summon in the Simulacrum. And they can actually summon enemies that are CC immune. Which kind of goes into why I like this build, but first I'll go over kind of some of the other builds here. So, like I said, this is a Bright Bonnet build. This build was kind of what I was mainly using before, is that, like, the old piece came out and, gave us access to Taran strikes and let us operate Mortar operators, because I really like doing Void Cascade, so having a reliable source of energy was really important. This one's the Infinity Eyes build. This is, like, just a really lazy build, where, realistically, I am casting an ability, like, once every 20 seconds at the very most, or besides Razor Mortar, I'm, like, casting an ability, like, every minute. Infinity Eyes is, like, a really nice passive armor strip. It just also looks cool, so, like, if you're wanting to do a fashion frame thing, you can do that. Zada's Whisper is, like, the placeholder for a generic damage buff, right? You can do Roar, you can do Eclipse, you can do, like, hell, even Shock Trooper and, like, Thermal Thunder. I wouldn't recommend that, and I'll go into that later. I like Zada's Whisper in particular because Zada's Whisper, besides the fact that it's just Zada's Whisper, it has a lot of really weird interactions. It has a cool interaction with Tau, actually. So, Zada's Whisper uses your weapon status chance to separately roll if you'll get a Void proc. Tau affects that. So it means that, like, if you're able to apply Tau, you're able to get really high Void procs, which is, like, really helpful if you're going to run something, like, with Infinite Punch Through and kind of have some interesting gimmicks with that. The main build I'm going to be doing is actually a Tesla Bank build. This is just because, like, to kind of go into the full, like, Summoner fantasy, where I'm going to have, like, 8 summon, or yeah, like 7 summons that are going to be able to passively do things, and help me, support me, either by killing things, debuffing enemies, or basic crowd control. And it's just kind of like a fun little gimmick. Tezzalink is also like a really good augment now that like a lot of its quirks got patched or got fixed or improved. So yeah, I'm actually gonna be, and I'm gonna like have a gameplay clip of me doing a deep mine bounty, to kind of just show this build in a very generic piece of content. I know a deep mine bounty also seems really weird. The reason why I picked the deep mine bounty is really simple. It kind of goes through a bunch of generic, game modes in a tile set that's like kind of like what you'll see, like an average tile set, and it kind of gives you a good degree of a lot of generic activities you might use this, right? This type of build really thrives in content where you have an activity or objective, right? An example I like to think of actually is like alchemy in ETA or EDA, where even though, yes, you do want to be killing ads, you need to kind of do a mechanic. So you can't constantly apply Razor Gyre. And on top of that, there might not be enemies you can constantly recast Razor Gyre, right? I know, for example, like a couple of the Murmur enemies can't be ragdolled, but also like something of I think it's Belligerence, where you have enemies with Overguard. That kind of shuts this build off to a point where you can't use it, and that's really hurts for Caliban. The extra duration just gives you kind of that buffer zone. So yeah, I'm gonna do that, and the one thing I'll say before I kind of cut to that is I understand that, like, you know, the Scrofa Corpus are far from the tankiest faction in the game. The reason why I'm doing this is more of that generic kind of do that, to show off, like, the game mode thing. You just saw the build. It chewed through Exo Goosetrap officers. Those are some of the tankiest enemies in the game, and realistically, like, Caliban has been proven to like be a very competent level cap frame with the more generic build. And, like, this build only has a little bit less strength, so you're going to very much be fine in day-to-day content. And even then, I take this build constantly in ETA and EDA, and I do fine. The one other thing I would bring up on that too, there will be an acolyte here, and that's like the other major thing that I'll bring up too. So I'll see you guys once we get to that bounty. Okay, so we're going to be doing Critter Liberation. So I kind of want to go over like one of the reasons why I want to go over this build and why I think it's kind of underrated and kind of goes into an issue with Warframe build crafting in general. Is that I think people very easily kind of fixate on optimizing a build in a setting of a Simulacrum. And don't get me wrong, the Simulacrum is a really helpful thing to have, and I mean, I use it all the time. The thing is that a lot of modern Warframe content is designed to kind of have you do some type of mechanic, right? For example, right, Deep Mine Bounties, Descendia, and the Purgator Rebellion, all like the latest activity, they all had the player actually like do a mechanic while also killing shit. So it's kind of like, I think, really important to have builds that are competent in that way, especially in a setting of you can't loop infinitely by yourself. Caliban in particular really has that. If you build him as a caster, he becomes really energy starved, or kind of starved on function, because he doesn't have the basic tools he needs to maintain himself. One thing I can go over is helmet ability options too. I honestly, if people are interested, I don't mind doing a video where I kind of almost go through almost every helmet option and kind of go over synergies, although I would be skimming through a lot of them because of redundancy. The one helmet ability I really haven't brought up that I do feel like I'm legally required to mention with Caliban is Nourish. Caliban probably is the best Nourish user in the entire game. Because of the fact that he's the only, right, he's able to actually synergize with it by having his Ortholists. Here's the thing though, especially if you're going to run Caliban as a weapons platform DPS hybrid, he has the issue of he's going to overproc viral insanely quickly. And so it's going to mess up your status disposition really badly, which kind of sucks for Tau. It also kind of hurts your damage if you're running a status weapon, right? Think something like a melee influence setup where you really need those consistent electricity procs, or even a weapon like the Phantasma or hell, the My Jupiter, where you need kind of your consistent DPS procs. Viral is really good, and I mean, if you like Viral, go ahead, power to you. I'm not going to be like, oh, you're being a meta slave, because I think it's such a stupid mindset to have. Especially for a helmet ability that is as good as Nourish. And it kind of goes into that of, like, if you want to play with that, entirely fine. I just say, like, you're going to try, and, like, I definitely wouldn't say it's the end-all be-all. The other helmets that I would bring up, I did mention Shock Trooper and Thermal Thunder, and Smite. Oh, I did bring up Smite Infusion, but those helmet abilities I wouldn't recommend Caliban, because unfortunately their augments don't work on the Ortholists, which kind of suck, because it prevents, like, really interesting build diversity, where you can kind of give the Ortholists, have them do something that stands out more than you might normally see. And it kind of sucks with that, and then from there, it's kind of the more generic helmets. Roar, Zada's, Eclipse, it's kind of your flavor of damage buff, where you'll do that. I'm hoping we're going to get an objective, damn it. I guess this is a okay example, although I'm not too happy about it. One of the things I'm really hoping is I get an objective where there's constant ad spawning, and I have to do something to engage with it, or I'm kind of limited to fight them. I mean, I guess right here's fine, right? As you can see, like, I have to look for Sprawdlings, and while I'm doing that, I can have my Ortholists kill, and, like, they're doing a good enough job. And again, like, I want to point out if, right, I still have 10 seconds going on.
You're quicker than you look, mate.
Right, I have 10 seconds going on, so I could have went on. If I got nullified by violence, or even been in Eximus, I would have still been able to function. Oh, this is actually, I think, a decent one for an example of this. But yeah, generally, like, I really hope that this video kind of encourages some more experimentation with Caliban, because I feel like Caliban, unfortunately, like, as much as I love him, does limit on, like, synergies with the Ortholists, or with his summons in general, which is part of the reason I'm running Tesla Nervos, is because, like, he doesn't have much, right? The, Conculists purely have the Fusion Strike synergy, which, I mean, isn't the worst in the world, but here's the thing, like, Fusion Strike works best as a debuff Hell in this build. It lasts 40 seconds, which is really good, and it's one of those things that then you have the Summulists that don't have any synergy. They're just generically survivability, and so it kind of prevents that from interacting. So that's kind of like my main hope, is that, like, we kind of get that in the future, maybe via augments, or hopefully they kind of patch that and make those different tools actually work. Yeah, unfortunately we're not really getting the best modifiers for this, but I mean, I guess this, again, I may have kind of AFKing here, and I don't like doing that, because I don't want to say, oh, this is an AFK build, but this is kind of the proof of point of, like, the whole, like, I can let the Ortholists do, like, here, I'm gonna let the Ortholists finish this last guy without doing anything. Right, as you can see, like, that does a competent job, and it lets me do other things. Especially since, like, a lot of more modern content is designed in that way, of, like, you need to do something. I think, Descendia is actually a really good example, too, because there's so many Eximus and Overguard, you might not be able to constantly apply it. I am hoping the Acolyte spawns, and kind of, I can show it off before it disappears. I might kind of just stall.
Walk in the park. Those critters almost look like they were having fun. The circle can be brutal sometimes.
I think, unfortunately, we're not going to get the Acolyte to spawn.
You did good
yeah, I just died there because I didn't let I kind of let my engine shut down without caring.
What am I paying you for?
Dang, no, Acolyte, that's unfortunate. Yeah, I'm just gonna revive myself real quick, and then I said I'm gonna revive myself. Okay, so yeah. I hope this build kind of is interesting, and I think like there's a lot of direction you can take this build. I think this is just my way of playing him. I don't want to also make it clear, I don't think this is like the secret meta for Caliban or anything. I just think this is a really interesting way to build him that is kind of underrated because it's very easy to get fixated on like, oh, if I hyper optimize the Ortholists, they can like kill if I constantly spam the one. Although I find that really boring and kind of can make him very easy like get distracted or whatever. Or like again, if you want to use weapons, like I was using a Jupiter, like this thing is far from meta or anything, and I was having a fun time with it. I will show the build one more time. Again, Tesla Bank is like the flex law if you want to do a different augment or even go pure. Again, Caliban's a great frame to go pure, like have no helmet on. Generally, there is some other silly interactions too. Like Caliban can do stuff like with pyrotechnics, with kind of some funny damage shenanigans that has, although it's nothing crazy. Um, I do hope that this build, like, I would hope people kind of put in the comments or whatever, or kind of their opinions on something, or if they've kind of done something interesting as well. I kind of hope, like, this gets a discussion of kind of, like, higher duration on Caliban. I do know this build's really high investment, and still, I think it's kind of a fun way to look at him that kind of plays more into the summoner weapons platform hybrid that he's kind of really well made to do. So I think that's kind of it for the video. I do appreciate you watching it if you've been through the whole thing. Again, I'm not gonna even promise I'm gonna make a future follow-up video unless I guess there is interest on that stuff. I might. I do hope though that you guys again, this was something that at least can get people thinking about different ways to build Caliban, or at least looking at him. And again, I would love to hear people's what they do in experiment with Caliban. Again, I think this is kind of like a really fun thing. So yeah, again, hope you guys have a great day. Thank you, and bye.